Hello there, and welcome to Journey to Recovery. Our podcast focuses on the co-occurring disorders of mental health and substance abuse. We present a wide range of thought-provoking, hopeful, and positive topics from a clinical yet practical perspective. Today we'll be talking about setting realistic expectations. Our host is Dr. Hal Baumchen, a licensed clinical psychologist and licensed alcohol and drug counselor. He's an author, speaker, and clinician with over 30 years of counseling experience. Welcome to our podcast. My name is Gaylen Morse, and I'm here today with Tim Bode, our operations director, along with Dr. Hal Baumchen, Journey to Recovery host and resident psychologist. Hey, Dr. Hal, how you doing today?
Well, good, Gaylen. It took us a little while to get kind of set up today, didn't it?
Right,
we were
it did.
talking a little bit, and it's nice to catch up with everybody before we start. And my expectation when we walk in here is that we'll kind of enjoy each other's company and enjoy our time together. So it's always kind of fun to get around Gaylen and talk with him.
And would you say that's a realistic expectation?
I would say.
I think it is.
Yeah, me too. Not going to be a frustrating time or a difficult time. And today we're going to talk about realistic expectations. How are you doing, Tim?
I'm doing well. Always nice to be here and see you, Gaylen.
Well, thank you. Likewise. Shouldn't we always expect the best?
That sounds reasonable, doesn't it? And we're going to talk about setting realistic expectations. But there's a tendency, if you expect the best, you end up becoming a little bit perfectionistic. And there's a danger there where we set the expectation almost too high. I expect to do my best. I expect to be perfect. I expect everything to go well, to go right, to be right. And it turns out it's not always like that.
So you're saying it's kind of hard to be always perfect at your best?
Yep, 100% of the time. And even though I maybe would want to be that way, but it sets me up to be disappointed both in myself and the world around me. I expect other people to be upbeat, outgoing, enthusiastic, funny, and have great stories to tell. I'm a clinical psychologist, probably not going to get that. Probably people are, I'm not going to be perfect and they're not going to be perfect. I need to have an expectation toward that end.
One part of setting realistic expectations would mean having a good understanding that people make mistakes.
Right, including yours truly and everyone here and all of our friends and family members too. They're going to make mistakes. And when I acknowledge the mistakes that I make, it frees me up to overlook the slights and the inconsistencies of other people. The Bible puts it this way: the righteous man falls 7 times, but arises again. Well, it's not saying the guy who's a fool falls. The right guy falls. But he does something that's really important here. He gets up, try again, get up again, try it again, do it now, do it with me helping you. And so that's what we want to do, acknowledge that people make mistakes, but that they can get up and try again. Pretty important principle in recovery. Mm-hmm. You might fall, you might slip, you might even relapse. Get up, try it again.
So let me see if I can say this the way I understand it. You strive to be better at getting up.
Yeah.
Admitting your mistakes, dusting yourself off, and trying again.
Right. Instead of, I know what I'm going to do this time. I'm never going to make another mistake as long as I live. No. Why don't you get better, like you said, Gaylen? Why don't you get better at getting up after you made a mistake instead of trying to not make another one?
That can be pretty hard for perfectionists like me.
I think it's kind of tough for everybody.
Let's just put our pens down for a second and talk to you about that. What is that like?
Being a perfectionist?
Yeah, and not wanting to give up and let it go and move on. It's good enough, Tim. Come on.
Yeah, right. It's there's some judgment of myself and how I see my value in not getting something perfect. So giving something over to somebody before I feel like it's perfect. I feel like, okay, I didn't do my best.
Right.
So I'm judging myself in that situation.
But maybe part of maturing, growing is to learn to be okay with that.
Right.
Right.
And a wise man who I know says finished is better than perfect.
Yeah, finished beats perfect. I've said that too.
Yes. Well, you're the wise man I'm talking about.
Do you think that's tough?
Well, yeah. But the other thing I was going to bring up is you've got another saying that I think really applies to what we're talking about right now. That since we've been doing this, it's made a difference in my life. That I know I'm doing something.
Yeah, a few simple things. I am doing a few simple things that help a little bit in some areas over time. And it's the anti-perfectionistic statement of all times, in my opinion. I'm not going to do them. I am doing a few things. I'm not doing a million. I'm not doing just one. I'm doing a few simple things. The things I'm doing aren't even complicated. They're just simple. I'm doing a few of them, and they help, but they don't fix or completely control. They just help, and they don't even help a lot. The few simple things that I'm doing help a little bit. And not even in every area. They just help a little bit in some areas, and not even right away. Those simple things that I'm doing help a little bit in some areas over time. So keep doing your simple things, and over time, you're going to get some benefit from it. Now, that became that anti-perfectionistic statement that I use to help myself. And it's been helpful for a lot of people.
Yes.
Can you do a few simple things?
Yeah, that simple statement reduces, like you said, perfectionistic thinking and changes the goal from being perfect into trying to develop yourself, make progress, and see some improvement.
And we often judge people on their actions, but we judge ourselves on our intentions. So right. I intended to be on time when I drove over to your house today, but I was late, but I intended to be on time. So we judge ourselves on our intentions, and then unfortunately, we judge other people on their actions. And so they were late, then we remember that. I was late, but I intended to be on time. As you extend mercy and compassion to other people, refrain from making those negative judgments, those harsh judgments on other people, and consider their intentions, not just their behaviors or their performance. And expect people to have an imperfect attitude about you. And if you're in recovery, you might expect people to have an imperfect attitude about your recovery. They might want you to be perfect. You're not going to be. They're going to be mad at you because you slipped again. But they have high expectations for you, but I want you to have realistic and appropriate expectations of them, which would mean they might see your recovery as flawed, but to move on anyway.
So people kind of have mistakes in their judgment of us as well.
Yeah, and oftentimes I think we want others to perfectly handle all of our mistakes.
Exactly. We make mistakes, but we expect them to deal with our mistakes perfectly. And this unrealistic attitude just leads to disappointments and resentments pretty much on everybody's part.
Yeah.
Many people say they are trying to change.
But in reality, Gaylen, I've spent my whole life trying to help people change. And I think sometimes people aren't changers, they're justifiers. They justify the mistakes that they're making, and they really don't make the changes I wish they would. Mm-hmm. And you've heard me say this a million times, but a guy came into my office the other day and he said, "Doc, every time I see a quarter or a nickel or a dime, I have a complete and total panic attack. What's the matter with me?" I said, "You're afraid of change." Yeah, a lot of people are afraid of change, Gaylen, and they justify their mistakes.
Although they may say they're trying to change, as you said, they're kind of expending a lot of energy to remain the same.
Exactly.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about developing realistic expectations. So if we have high expectations for people, we can become easily offended. And if we have low expectations for ourselves, we just stay stuck where we are. So Dr. Hal, what do you suggest that would help us develop realistic expectations of ourselves and of others?
Well, we're going to talk through it, and I think it's good to set realistic expectations for ourselves, just like you said, but also to set realistic expectations for others. And I want us to have pretty high expectations for ourselves, so we're going to talk through that.
So setting realistic expectations must mean then that I'm willing to accept responsibility.
Back to that change thing. So exactly right. You're accepting responsibility for your own character, your disposition, your actions, and you're willing to be accountable to other people. They can look into your life and you're going to be upfront about who you are and what you're doing. Now, as I move forward, I'm willing to work toward a desirable recovery and a better life. This process is particularly helpful for people struggling with emotional and chemical disorders. You have to be able to set realistic expectations. So let's take a look at a few things that are going to help us.
Yeah, let's do that. So we're going to share with you 7 things that will help you set reasonable expectations of yourself and of others.
Number 1, take a fierce moral inventory and make a rock-solid commitment to truth.
Just have to be willing to look at yourself plainly, honestly, directly, admit your faults and mistakes, and out of that, like, I know my vulnerabilities, I know my mistakes, I know what I have trouble with, and so now I'm going to set expectations moving forward, but my expectations, because I'm looking at really how I am wired, I'm able to set realistic expectations.
Number 2 is spot your own ultra-high expectations, perfectionistic demands, and critical judgments of yourself.
Did you write that?
No, but I could have.
Yeah, that's good. In this step, you're examining how you set expectations and how you treat yourself when you fail them. Are you critical? Do you talk to yourself negatively? Do you call yourself names? Do you put yourself down? So if you say yes to all of those, and we're going to want to adjust that, we want you to acknowledge that I do make mistakes. I can find a simple way to push through my mistakes rather than trying harder never to make another one. I got to be gracious, understanding, and merciful to myself.
Mm-hmm. Number 3 is admit to your faults and shortcomings.
Becoming guarded, defensive, and resistant to change just causes you to be stuck. Be willing to admit that you've made some mistakes.
Right. Number 4 is watch your sense of superiority, seeing others as inferior and substandard.
They make mistakes, but I don't.
Right.
Yeah, well, be careful there. Don't think more highly of yourself than you ought to. Hey, I do want you to set high expectations for yourself, but also realistic ones. But don't think you're God's gift to the planet either. So realistic expectations. Don't continue to compare yourself to other people. Try to find ways where you can lift them up rather than trying to put them down. And have an accurate understanding of your own strengths and, of course, your own weaknesses.
Number 5 is target improvements to your character.
You know, I'm big into this. We're not just watching behavior here. I'm not just trying harder not to drink. I'm also trying to watch my own attitude, disposition, and my own character. I'm trying to be kind, loving, patient, understanding, respectful, responsible. So make sure that you're targeting character, not just single behaviors like not drinking.
And number 6 is set expectations in the middle. Gaylen, you talked about the ditch earlier, right?
Yes. Always on both sides of the road. Or there's a cliff and a wall.
Yeah. So on one hand, maybe we would have being lazy, apathetic, irresponsible. And then on the other ditch that you might drive into might be being perfectionistic, demanding of yourself, never able to make a mistake, harsh with yourself when you do. And so we want to stay in that middle of the road, realistic expectations, and you're going to try hard, you're going to work hard, you're going to go forward, and you're going to slip and fall sometimes.
So what about expectations for other people?
Well, I like thinking set your expectations for other people in a realistic way. So if you've got an uncle who has made fun of you for 20 years in a row, every time you go to his house for Thanksgiving dinner and you're going again this year, a realistic expectation might be he's going to make fun of me again. Don't tell yourself because you have learned a few new jokes that you're somehow going to be able to entertain him in such a way that he won't be rude, sarcastic, or mean to you this year. That there's nothing in the history that would lead you to believe that he's changed. So set a realistic expectation. I might do something kind of fun, like I'd give him about 8 minutes this year before he makes fun of me. That's probably in keeping with reality. So when you set expectations for other people, hey, I believe the best about people, but I also want to kind of be careful here that I set them according to what I've seen in the past and don't try to pretend that this year your drug using friends won't offer you something to smoke this year. Why would you think that? So set your expectations realistically.
Yeah. Isn't that like believing that people never change?
Well, that's a good thought, but no, not really. You're really setting your expectations with the evidence that you have. Have they made any changes that you can see? Or nope, they really haven't. Then failure to see any evidence may indicate that, hey, they're actually going to be about the same.
Mm-hmm.
So expectations are set according to previous history and the lack of any movement.
Right. And if they've moved, if they're different, hey, adjust your expectations positively. But if they haven't, maybe keep them where they were.
Yeah.
I had that uncle, by the way.
Oh, my.
And now I've realized that I faced that whole situation incorrectly.
And I keep trying to get him to like me.
Yeah.
But the expectation is, no, he's going to be about the same as he was the previous 21 years.
Number 7, be gracious and forgiving.
This is good advice when other people around you fail your expectations, and that happens, of course. So let it go, overlook it, cover it over, be forgiving of it. Let go of other people's faults. Don't harbor bitterness. Don't be dragging that forward with you. Don't remind them endlessly of it. So we want to be, gracious, understanding, and forgiving of them and of ourselves.
Thanks, Dr. Hal. If our listeners would like more information on co-occurring disorders or on any of our other topics related to this one, check us out on the website at journeytorecovery.com. Here to tell you more is Mr. Gaylen Morse.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. You can download materials that help you develop skills to identify emotional problems, reduce symptoms, and prevent relapse at journeytorecovery.com. We've been visiting with Dr. Hal Baumchen, a licensed clinical psychologist and licensed alcohol and drug counselor. His expertise and clinical wisdom is now available at journeytorecovery.com. Share this resource with your peers and colleagues. I'm Gaylen Morse. Thanks for listening, and see you next time. Remember, recovery is a journey. Enjoy the ride.